Orion noticed my raised foot and directly opened the passenger door. "Get in, I'll take you to the hospital." But my gaze fell on the girl who had been following Orion without making her presence known. She had been silently following us, as docile as a little rabbit. Ding! Wisnovel reminds you to click the subscribe button in the bottom right corner to read the complete novel. When she noticed my gaze, she spoke gently. "Orion, you take her to the hospital. I'll take a taxi home by myself." "All right, let me know when you get home safely." Orion bid her farewell in a familiar tone. I had a gut feeling that their relationship was not simple. After driving for a while, I couldn't help but ask him, "Who was that girl just now?" "A friend." Orion stared straight ahead, uninterested in explaining further to me. I kept repeating the word friend in my mind. Friends who could come to a romantic restaurant together. My nose felt a little sour, so I turned to look out the window, not wanting Orion to see tears welling up in my eyes. The girl seemed graceful and cultured, completely different from the girl that night. Perhaps she was destined for Orion, and I could only be his half-sister. Just like Orion cursed me, I haven't had a peaceful night since moving into the Hather house. Outside, thunder and lightning were raging, and I sat on the edge of the bed, holding my phone. The screen went dark and then lit up again. As the time crossed midnight, today was my birthday. 15 years ago on my birthday, my dad said he was going out to buy me a birthday gift, but he never came back. My dad and mom were once the perfect couple, from school uniforms to wedding gowns. But after marriage, the romantic days turned into mundane routines, and one day my dad couldn't bear it anymore. He held me in his arms for a long time, as if he wanted to say everything in one go. Finally, he said he was going to buy me a birthday gift and asked me to be obedient. I stood on the balcony and watched him drive away in a red sports car, eagerly expecting him to bring back the latest Barbie doll set for me, not knowing it was a farewell. When my mom found out that my dad had run away, she vented all her anger on me. She scolded me as a jinx, blaming my birth for forcing them to shoulder the burden of life. If it weren't for me, they would still be leading a sweet and happy life. My birth brought them not joy, but endless pain. She hit me on the head with her bag and locked me in the room for 2 days and nights. I listened to her crying and cursing outside, my tears falling silently, feeling as if my heart had turned numb. On my birthday, I learned that my birth was not expected by anyone. Tossing and turning, I got up to go to the living room to get a glass of water. A flash of lightning outside the window made me startle, and I saw a figure on the sofa in a daze. I decisively turned on the light switch, only to find it was Orion sitting silently in the dark with his eyes open. "Why are you sitting here instead of sleeping?" He stared at me without saying a word. I thought our relationship had improved since he helped me last time, but obviously I was wrong. I awkwardly walked around him to pour a glass of water, but he stood up and blocked my way. "For you." He expressionlessly threw a wooden box into my arms. "What's this?" "Summer solstice gift." My birthday falls on the summer solstice, but I never celebrate it. During school, only Orion would give me a birthday gift in the name of a summer solstice present, telling me that my birthday was worth celebrating. I opened the box, revealing a lucky charm inside. It's a holiday benefit from the company, one for each person, for safety. I fiddled with the lucky charm and muttered softly. The company treats its employees so well, even giving out benefits for this kind of holiday. Of course, the Hather Group is a big company, Orion said with a proud look. Even though it was a company benefit, I was still very happy. This was the only birthday gift I had received in several years. I hung the lucky charm around my neck and gave him a slight smile. "Thank you, Mr. Hather." Orion pursed his lips and turned around with a stern face, heading back to his room. For once, I had a good night's sleep and woke up when the sun was high in the sky. When I got up, I found my mom cooking in the kitchen, preparing a sumptuous lunch. Since she married into the Hather family, she had been living a life of luxury and never cooked again. The table was set with a new tablecloth, and my favorite daisies were arranged in a vase. I couldn't help but wonder if this was all for me. Had my mom finally remembered my birthday? With a joyful expression, my mom looked at me with my messy hair and immediately changed her expression. "Why are you dressed like this? Hurry up and dress properly. We have important guests coming. Don't embarrass me." With these words, she brought me back to reality. How could she remember my birthday? Everything she did was for her own agenda. The guests she mentioned were Orion's uncle and aunt, who lived with Orion's grandfather. Orion's grandfather did not acknowledge my mom's identity, so she was eager to please every member of the Hather family. It was not until noon that the guests arrived, but it was not Orion's uncle, but his cousin, Luke Hather. This was the first time I had met Luke Hather. His features were very similar to Orion's, but his temperament was more gentle. His slightly curly hair fell just below his shoulders, giving off a vibe of a wandering artist. "Sorry, uncle, my dad couldn't make it today." Luke apologized verbally, but his attitude showed no remorse. Everyone knew that the Hather family simply did not like my mom and me, so they casually sent Luke to the banquet. During the meal, Luke quickly sat down next to me, 1 second before Orion, and said, "Amelia, you are much prettier in person than in photos. You should come to our house often in the future." His gaze at me was too intense, so I awkwardly shifted my plate to the side. "Luke, please focus on your food." Suddenly, Luke was called up by Orion and looked displeased, tilting his head and smiling with hidden intentions. "Brother, grandfather wants you to visit the old house recently. family, and he prepare for a blind date for you. I saw the photos, they are all pretty. Orion raised his eyes slightly. If you like them, I can introduce them to you. No, you can keep them for yourself. Socialites and ladies are just too boring. I prefer the wild ones, Luke said, glancing at me ambiguously. My hand holding the chopsticks trembled, and I quickly lowered my head to eat my food. I was in a bad mood and didn't care to witness the power struggles between the wealthy brothers. After the meal, I retreated to my room. I was about to close the door when Luke stuck his foot in the door. What are you doing? I looked at Luke warily. Luke casually walked in, pulled out a chair and sat down as if he owned the place. Don't be nervous, let's have a chat. Luke had a faint smile on his face, like a sly fox. I stood guard by the door, ready to run if things went south. What do we have to chat about? The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Orion dislikes you, so naturally we are friends. Amelia, I know what you and your mother want, but as long as Orion is in charge, you won't get a single hair of the company. So, why don't you help me take over the company, and I'll give you a share of the money. Another person who thought I was plotting against the Hathor group. I was really tired of dealing with this. I'm sorry, I don't want to be a tool in the fight for the Hathor family's inheritance. I'm not interested in your family's assets. Luke seemed to find something extremely funny, laughing until his eyes formed crescents. I prefer women who are more straightforward. Suddenly, Luke stood up and approached me step by step. I grabbed the door handle, ready to open the door and run, but Luke pressed against the door, trapping me against his chest. His face was so close, the mole at the corner of his eye was as red as blood, making him look even more delicate. He brushed away the stray hair on my forehead and deliberately lowered his voice, with a seductive charm. Amelia, if you work hard, and if I can marry you, half of the Hathor family will be yours. His breath brushed against my ear as he spoke, making me shiver all over. I suddenly kicked him hard, right in the chest. He didn't expect such a fierce counterattack from me. He winced in pain, loosening his grip on me. Just as I didn't know how to end this, there was a knock on the door, and Orion walked in just in time. Luke, don't barge into a girl's room casually. Show some manners. Seeing Orion, Luke endured the pain and immediately resumed his carefree attitude. Brother, you really have no vision. Can't you see we were having a great conversation? Maybe we could have developed a beautiful relationship, but you ruined it. Orion's eyes turned red, and he sternly reprimanded him. Luke Hathor, show some respect. She's your sister. Sister? Grandfather doesn't recognize her and her mother. Yuri accepting it so easily. Have you forgotten how your mother died? Orion was completely enraged by Luke's words. He raised his hand and ruthlessly punched Luke in the face, then pinned him to the ground and started beating him fiercely. Luke obviously didn't expect Orion's reaction, but after being kicked by me and then pressed down by Orion, he was powerless to fight back. Orion, stop it, don't hit him. Orion seemed to not hear me, mechanically landing blow after blow on Luke's face. I held onto Orion's waist and had to use all my strength to pull them apart. Luke ran away in a panic, leaving me standing with Orion, my chest heaving. When I came to my senses, I quickly withdrew my hand and distanced myself from him. I vividly remembered the humiliation I suffered after kissing him while drunk last time. My action left Orion bewildered, and he solemnly warned me, stay away from Luke. He's not a good person. He got beaten up, so he should behave himself a bit. I nodded in silence. On my birthday, my mom, unsurprisingly, forgot again. After experiencing such chaos, my mood hit rock bottom. As I turned to leave, Orion stopped me. I thought today was your birthday, so I casually ordered a cake and left it outside the door. You can go get it yourself. Tears finally streamed down my face. The only one who could remember my birthday was Orion, who hated me the most. Now, I could only draw a little warmth from his indifferent tone. Fate had it that I would run into the last person I wanted to see everywhere. During a departmental bar outing, I spotted Luke as soon as I sat down. Through the crowd, I saw him being intimately involved with a hot chick. Suddenly, he turned sharply and caught my gaze that I failed to retract in time. He pushed the girl away and strode towards me. Colleagues who knew him stood up and made way for him. I also stood up to leave, but Luke firmly pressed his hand on my shoulder, keeping me in place. He sat opposite me, with his shirt partially unbuttoned, and casually wiped off the lipstick at the corner of his mouth. So, have you considered the matter from last time? What matter? Help me take over the company, then marry me. Have you forgotten Orion's warning? I lightly chuckled, looking at his still slightly bruised face. Speaking of Orion, his face instantly darkened. Orion Hathor? Why should I listen to him? He's just relying on Grandpa's favoritism, always trying to suppress me. But he forgot that I'm naturally rebellious. The more he tries to keep me away, the more I want to get involved. His eyes grew even more sinister, which made me feel shocked and forced me to deal with him patiently. Luke, I'm just a small employee at Hathor Group. How could I have the ability to help you take over the company? He beamed in an instant. Do I need to clarify your relationship with Orion? You have the ability. Luke moved over to sit beside me with one step, and a faint scent of women's perfume emanated from him. Seriously, Amelia, I look quite similar to Orion. Would you consider me instead? You hate Orion so much, yet you don't mind that I'm his ex-girlfriend? Luke raised his hand to cup my cheek, lightly caressing it with the back of his hand. I disdainfully pushed his hand away and stepped back repeatedly, but but he grabbed my waist and pulled me back. Orion's woman, I really want to taste it. Besides, you yourself are quite a feast for the eyes. Before I could speak a word, Luke suddenly waved his hand in front of my eyes, emitting an incredibly fragrant smell from his sleeve. My senses instantly dulled, and his face began to blur before my heavy eyelids slowly closed. My consciousness slowly returned, and I felt like there was an arm pressing down in front of me. As my body regained sensation, I instinctively began to struggle, but my eyelids remained heavy and couldn't open. The arm seemed to tighten around me as I moved. I screamed desperately, "Get away! Don't touch me!" The next moment, I felt the scorching heat of his chest. His embrace was familiar, and I slowly heard his voice. "Amelia, it's me. I'm Orion." It was Orion. I felt his warmth and gradually calmed down. He held me quietly, as if time had stopped. His embrace always made me feel at ease. After a while, I slowly opened my hazy eyes and met his anxious gaze. "Amelia, are you okay?" I struggled to sit up, looked around, and realized I was in my room. I rubbed my slightly aching temples. "I'm okay. Where's Luke? I can't believe that guy has stooped to such a level. I should just break both his arms." Orion's eyes were filled with unprecedented fierceness. "I've informed Grandpa. He won't let him off lightly." I nodded, noticing that he was staring at me intently, and couldn't help blushing. "Why are you here? Your department had a dinner gathering, and I was supposed to attend tonight. I happened to run into Luke carrying you, unconscious." "Amelia, I can't imagine what would have happened if I had been late today." His expression was filled with pain. He knelt by the bedside, and upon closer inspection, I noticed that his hand had been trembling slightly.